educators. So I'm going to take over and just share a little bit more about some considerations for the systems that we designed to support and also retain special educators. First we're going to share two different resources with you, and I'm wondering if Nick or Amy, you could put links to both of those in the chat for people as we're going through these slides. Seeing someone's email on. Okay. So as we go through these next few slides, we want to acknowledge, and I know we've said it over and over and over again, that mentoring is a critical component of a comprehensive induction program, but we know it's not enough on its own. And we know that really to truly support induction and long-term retention of special educators, we have to have this web of support for educators. And that really does include a multi-pronged approach to induction. And it also includes designing really supportive work contexts for our special educators. And so comprehensive induction programs have a lot of different components to them. And these supportive work contexts often include like a lot of different aspects that make up that full web of support. And so in the next few slides, we're really going to be drawing on two key resources that I just asked Nick and Amy to share in the chat. And one is the Standards for High Quality Beginning Educator Induction Programs from OSPI's Beginning Educator Support Team. So many of you might be aware that this resource exists on specifically comprehensive induction programs. Right now, they're also in the middle of revising that. And so we should see a new edition sometime soon. And then the other resource that we're drawing from today comes out of the University of Florida, and it's specific to the induction of beginning special educators. So it talks about all of those components of supportive work context and a comprehensive induction program that are unique to special educators' roles. We're going to dive into each of these areas that you see on the screen in the coming slides. And we're also just going to share some additional strategies that really build on what we learned from that survey, the survey results that we just shared. They also align with current research on induction and retention of special educators and align with our grant, our KEYS grant strategy map. So next slide, please. So we'll first just dive into those components or those aspects of a comprehensive induction program for teachers of special education. And we just wanted to share a quote from the best induction standards. And I'll read it aloud for everyone. And it says, high quality induction moves beyond offering a summer orientation and mentoring that's dependent on the generosity of beginning educators' colleagues. It provides ongoing job-embedded professional learning and support. And so we chose this quote because induction is so much more than just the emotional support or maybe mentoring. It really also needs to focus on the professional growth of educators. And I'll share that in those first couple years, special educators, they form those like inclusive commitments, their pedagogies that they're going to carry forward well into their career. And so when we're thinking about our induction programs, we need to also start thinking about how are we providing opportunities for professional growth and support so that educators can develop those skills and the self-efficacy to continue teaching. So next slide, great. So one of the first areas that we really focus on, and this is for all of our folks from HR that are on our webinar right now, as well as our special ed directors and anyone else that's involved in hiring. One of the critical components of retention that we often overlook or may not be forefront, or we may not be thinking of it as a component of an induction program, is really our hiring practices. And so when there's a strong fit between beginning special educators and their assigned work context, they're more likely to enter into their first year with the skills, knowledge, and some self-efficacy to really fulfill those teaching responsibilities and meet their student needs. So when we're hiring beginning special educators, hiring teams, really need to know and understand their employment needs and the context in which they'll be placing new teachers. They should be really transparent and intentional about recruitment and sharing information about the role, as well as information about what supports are available for teachers as they enter. And then when they're selecting candidates, really seeking to find that optimal fit between the applicant and the specific role. And one thing that we talked about in my past breakout room is just understanding where patterns of attrition may be in your district and thinking about what's in that context. How can there be an intentional job match or role match when you're hiring? So it really means that our hiring teams should be considering aspects of job matching, such as the area of disability that a teacher might be teaching, the age and the grade level, the content preparation, and then the program model, and looking at those aspects in relation to a candidate's experience, their strengths, their preferences, as a way to support that strong job matching. So orientation was something that came up a lot in our survey results, and we heard things like, I never got an orientation as a beginning teacher. I still don't know how to use our district technology. I need support with really understanding things like our key policies and procedures. And so one critical component of a strong, comprehensive induction program is providing orientation for beginning educators. And that strong orientation is necessary for all teachers. But then there are some specifics that need to be addressed for our beginning special educators. So the information that we provide in orientation includes, all of the key information that teachers would need to perform their job duties and to navigate their context and roles. And so for all educators, this really should include information about key policies that they need to be following and be aware of, how to access specific resources. I think part of that also is sharing with beginning teachers who they can contact if they need additional support. Having information and orientation about role expectations, which includes also instructional expectations, and making that connection to their mentor. And then for our beginning special educators, orientation really should include information that's necessary for their specific roles. And so things like the technology and the procedures that are required for IEP development or evaluations, expectations for working with paraeducators, supporting paraeducators, and some information around how to create schedules, and really start thinking about organizing and managing caseloads. So on the screen, you're seeing the themes and categories that we identified from the qualitative results of the survey, and Amy shared those on what beginning educators identified as their desired purpose or the functions of a mentor. And what we talked about is, one person can't really be responsible for doing all of these things. And also, I think we need to also see or understand how much is asked of our mentors and the versatility that they may need to be able to support beginning special educators. And so, we can't assume that, all good teachers are also going to be great mentors. We need to be able to give them the skills that they need to be successful, to be mentors. And so when we invest in initial and ongoing training, we can really support mentors with developing the skills that they need to provide support, and also the skills that they need to support beginning special educators with, doing their own problem solving, or generating ideas to either overcome challenges or to support the students in their classroom. And successful district mentoring include two components: that initial training that prepares mentors for their roles and responsibilities. And then the second is just ongoing opportunities for mentors that really do support their continued development, and then provides them with assistance for navigating challenging situations that may arrive in their mentoring roles. And so many of our districts, and maybe some of you on this call, are involved in the Best Mentoring Grant, which does provide training for mentors, a very comprehensive mentor training, as well as ongoing opportunities for mentors to come together monthly to engage in shared learning, to engage in shared problem solving. And so those are really good opportunities for mentors to continue to develop their skills so that they can best support our beginning special educators. So in our survey, our beginning special educators indicated that they needed support with professional development in the first 3 years of their role. And specifically, they wanted professional development that was relevant to their roles and their contexts. And so we also know, if we're thinking about adult learning and we're thinking about best practices for professional development, that effective professional development has to be sustained, it has to be job embedded, and it has to be applicable and relevant to educators' roles. And some of the things that we heard in the survey were, I'm always included with the gen ed professional development, but I never really receive professional development that's specific to my role in special education. And so as districts plan their professional learning for the year, it's important to really consider beginning special educators' professional development needs, and really consider how mentors may be able to provide follow-up support for beginning special education teachers as they apply their learning apply their learning from professional development in their classroom. So really thinking about how mentors can be that bridge to support beginning special educators with trying a new strategy or really applying their learning. And the other thing, and Amy mentioned this earlier in the presentation that came up, that I think is an interesting concept to consider as we're thinking about mapping out professional development for the year and supporting beginning special educators, is that we received comments that from beginning special educators that they see value in participating in shared learning and professional development with their mentor. So having that co-learning and having that support, which also then supports our mentors and beginning special educators with applying that learning in the classroom. So several beginning special educators who responded to our survey identified the value of receiving ongoing feedback in a supportive context throughout their first years of teaching. And the survey respondents identified mentors and also administrators as key personnel who could provide that ongoing feedback that was in alignment with their evaluation system. We had comments that support with navigating the teacher education or evaluation system, and then having some practice with being observed and receiving feedback were important supports from mentors. So when beginning special educators can really receive on a support of somebody like our, it really does support their professional growth and can positively impact students. And supporting mentors by providing them with the time and training to be able to go in and observe their mentee, to provide supportive feedback, can be a really important factor in educator growth and also their retention. So kind of the last aspect that we'll touch on the comprehensive induction program just revolves around development and refinement of an induction program, and recognizing that this should really be an ongoing process. And so, having a team at the district level that can have some methods in place to evaluate the effectiveness of their induction program and make adjustments as necessary to meet the needs of beginning special educators and the students and families that they serve. And so, I mentioned this earlier of how often are we asking our beginning teachers what they need? Do we have feedback loops in place where we can really get input and data from a variety of sources to evaluate whether or not our induction support as a district is meeting their needs? And so, when we're looking at our programs and we're evaluating whether or not they're meeting the needs, we really need to have a group that has, wide representation, including beginning special educators, mentors, students, and families that are really involved in this process of evaluating whether or not our programs are working the way that we want them to for induction. So we want to be looking at things like alignment between our stated induction program goals and then the components that we have in place to see if we're meeting those goals. And then as you've seen earlier in the presentation, the survey that we did is one method of data collection that could be helpful. But teams should also be looking at a variety of data sources, such as exit interviews, attrition data across buildings or across classrooms even, student level data, and then input from educators, families, and students. And so as we're evaluating our program and exploring the data, there might be the need for revisions to a program, and that might happen continually to make sure that we're meeting our induction program goals. And so just recognizing that as revisions are made, teams should also be considering what supports might be necessary to implement those changes and then to continue monitoring our induction programs. So now just moving a little bit more into a supportive community and work context for special educators. So the first one that we'll start with is just deliberate role design, and beginning special education teachers may not always understand what leaders expect of them. And this can really interfere with their effectiveness and contribute to a lot of anxiety and stress. And some novice special educators experience what we call role conflict, which occurs when there are other personnel like district administrators, principals, mentors, or teachers that have different expectations for them. And there's a lot of research on role conflict for special education teachers and how that can contribute to attrition. There's also a lot of research on role ambiguity. And so when people don't know what's expected of them and don't know what their role is, it can really lead to burnout. And so when we're thinking about deliberate role design, it's necessary for us as districts to be able to articulate to our beginning special educators and everybody that works with them the expectations of their role and their specific job responsibilities. And I say that these need to be communicated out to building administrators and also their colleagues, just so that we can support our teachers with having consistent expectations. And so when we're thinking about a supportive work context and this deliberate role design, districts should consider how to reduce caseload numbers and expectations as beginning special educators are learning their role and then gradually taking on more responsibilities in their role. And so they should be really explicit in defining those job expectations and the priorities for teachers. providing support for scheduling and accessing the resources that are really relevant and necessary for their specific role. And then buildings should have a plan in place to support with school-wide positive behavioral support and discipline. So it's not just falling on our special educators to support the behavioral needs of students. And then other supportive strategies really include providing support to beginning special educators with facilitating meetings. And we heard that in our survey that a lot of beginning special educators wanted somebody with them for those first couple IEP meetings. Support with working with paraeducators and managing time and organizing themselves for case management. And then thinking that this support can kind of gradually be reduced as beginning special educators learn their role and take on more responsibility. So the next area of a supportive work context, and this should align with everyone's thinking in this space, and I know it's come up in breakout rooms, is just the importance that building administrators play in induction support. And research shows that building administrators can really be influential in a special educator's intent to remain in the profession. And our building administrators as instructional and building leaders really do lead the way for establishing a school's culture and climate. And so supportive cultures and climates that are, welcoming, inclusive, they really foster psychological safety and also provide emotional support when necessary. Those contexts prioritize collaboration and have structures in place to facilitate collaboration between general and special education teachers, and then encourage connection between teachers. And these are all key to really establishing that web of support for all educators and in creating these inclusive cultures where there's a shared responsibility for educating all students. Inclusionary practices, is a shared system responsibility and also a factor that relates to retention. And as we learned from our survey, many special educators indicated that they needed support to facilitate inclusionary practices. And this was either through administrative support for collaborating with general education teachers, or assistance with communicating general education and special education teachers' expectations and responsibilities for implementing inclusionary practices. And we know collaboration with general education and strong leadership are necessary for really creating that shared responsibility and creating the structures and systems that ensure that all students with disabilities are provided with opportunities to receive rigorous, high quality instruction and experience that sense of belonging with their peers. And so professional development and coaching for all teachers and inclusionary practices is an ongoing statewide need, and one that we feel is really essential to special educator retention. And then the final factor that we'll share around these supportive community and work partnerships is really on family and community partnerships. And this figure comes from OSPI's Title I programs, and it really outlines the critical components and skills that are necessary for building meaningful partnerships with families and communities. And we know academic success starts at home and it consolidates at school, and with continuous partnership and support of families. And so we know that educators need that support to build trusting relationships with families and to build and foster authentic partnerships. And they also need to develop those skills to uplift and integrate the wisdom and strengths of our students and families. And so districts should really consider ways that they're providing professional development and ongoing coaching as educators develop these skills and continually reflect on how they're partnering with our families and communities. And as Nick mentioned, the KEYS grant focuses on family and community partnerships as a key driver for special educator retention. and one that's really necessary for ensuring that all students receive an equitable and inclusive education that's responsive to their identities and their strengths and needs.